Today on TOKKANTE, I want to talk about one of my all-time unobtainable top 2 Grail watches, that is the Patek Philippe 5178G. And unless you're familiar with that reference already, before you start Googling it, no, it's not an annual calendar, it's not a perpetual calendar, and it's not a perpetual calendar chronograph. It's the complication that Patek Philippe is the king of. It's a minute repeater. So why this specific model? I'm not going to go into the history of minute repeaters, but I'll tell you about why I picked this specific model of one of my Grail watches, and then we'll talk about the complication, we'll talk about the chime, the movement, the finishing, even the dial. But even at that Grail level, there's still something that bothers me. It's always something. Hi everyone and welcome, I'm Ben. So as promised, I'm not gonna do a history lesson on minute repeaters. That could be an entire video in and of itself. But before we get into it, I just wanted to mention, you know me, I like all things German, that the minute repeater was invented by an unknown German watchmaker in 1720 in Germany. So it is German in a way. Then it was, picked up by Breguet, I think in the 1820s. So some people think Breguet invented the minute repeater, but he didn't. He made it maybe more commercially available. And then Patek Philippe started making them actually and selling them from their first year in 1839. But then for the longest of time, it was just pocket watches, not really, it was still quite rare, not really available. It was, application pieces even back then. So then it was quite hard to find. Up until 1889, when they actually relaunched the minute repeater in a wristwatch. That was the 34 or 3974. And then since then, Patek Philippe has been making minute repeaters continuously. So now, why this one, the 5178G? So first of all, this is obviously very, very rare piece for Patek. It is an application piece, and it is an extremely expensive piece. It is about the last official retail price I found was from 2017, and it was about 400,000 US dollars. But maybe last year I saw one in Hong Kong actually that was going for about 450,000 US dollars. So it's extremely expensive, but if you think about it, it's still cheaper than that stupid olive Nautilus that went at auction for 490,000 US dollars. So, you can look at it this way, for about the same amount of money of what you can get. So why a minute repeater? A minute repeater to me, is alive. The minute repeater sings to you, it talks to you, and it will tell you the time. And I think personally that the minute repeater is really about the art of watchmaking. And I'll talk about in the next section why a minute repeater is so special. And especially this one is not just your basic regular minute repeater, but it is a minute repeater with cathedral gong. Also, you can look at it this way. A minute repeater is one of the 3 queens of grand complications. You have the minute repeater, then second you have the perpetual calendar, and then third you have the split chronograph. And no, the tourbillon is not a complication. That's another argument for another day. So this one, is about, it's 40 mil. So in a way, it's almost like it's a 40 mil by 10.5 millimeter thin with a cream dial, a grand feu enamel dial that looks almost kind of a casual dressy watch. This is the type of watch that nobody would ever know that this is a minute repeater, let alone a minute repeater with a cathedral gong in it. It kind of looks like your regular, a dressy watch, but it looks like nothing special unless you notice, the lever on the side for the minute repeater. So some people might think, well, 40 mil, it's a bit large for a dressy minute repeater. But you have other versions available. You have the 5078G that's in 38 mil, but because it is smaller, this one cannot fit the cathedral gong. So it is a classic, basic, standard minute repeater. And you also had before that the 5078P in platinum with a white grand feu enamel with the Roman numeral, that one, which was a lot more formal. Now this is the one actually that got me interested in the Patek minute repeaters. I used to love that one because I also love grand feu enamel dials, but it was so formal and it was so dressy, and I mean there is no way I would ever pull that off in my life. But if I could afford the 5178G, I think this is the type of minute repeater that you could wear casually and no one would take notice of it. So what is a minute repeater complication? A minute repeater has a mechanism that will read the time and basically sing it back to you with a chime that will tell you the hours and then the quarters and then the minutes. So I'm sure you've seen Tim Marceau set one at 12:59, and that will be the longest chime because you will get 12 hours and then 3 quarters and then 14 minutes. So Patek Philippe is considered the king of minute repeaters because Thierry Stern, the president, has said that other brands may be able to make one minute repeater or 2 minute repeaters and get lucky with it, but to be able to reproduce time and time again the quality and purity of the time repeater, this is no chance. This is savoir-faire of their watchmakers. So a minute repeater typically will take 200 to 300 hours to make. I mean, imagine that, 300 hours to make a minute repeater. And only the most skilled of their watchmakers are able to attempt that. It requires at least 15 years of apprenticeship under Patek Philippe. Plus, not only that, but you also need to have a certain level of artistry and also the ear, because a minute repeater is all about the voice of the watch. So this is not about something that can be calculated or that can be done on a computer and then made by a machine. This is all about the savoir-faire of the watchmakers who can do it. They need to adjust and bend the gongs of the minute repeater by ear, sometimes by a tiny little amount, and then do it again and again and again, and it can take days and weeks and sometimes even months before they get the sound that they're looking for. This is pure, human watchmaking form. This is not about, mass making a luxury watch. Going back to the mechanism, how does it work? So you have the movement, and then you have what you call, a gong that goes around the movement, and you will have hammers that will basically hit the gong, and that will generate the sound of the minute repeater. So a classic minute repeater, the gong will go around the movement once. But a cathedral gong minute repeater, like this one, then the gongs are almost twice as long, and they will go around the movement almost twice, which is exponentially more difficult to do, because when you need to have 2 of those gongs for the hours and then the minutes, and they cannot basically touch themselves when they go around twice. They cannot touch each other, and they cannot touch the case of the watch, which is also why this one is 40 mil. So this is really hard to do. So what's the point to go around twice, you say? Is it just for the hell of it? No, it's because if you go around twice, then it will give you a much fuller and louder sound, hence the word cathedral. So the movement in this one is the 27 RPS, I think, which is a 3 Hertz movement, 43-hour power reserve. Of course, it has a Spiromax balance wheel with a Gyromax hairspring. I mean, it's basically their technology for silicon hairspring and escapement. It has beautiful black polishing for the hammers, and an anglage and all the finishing that you would expect, of course, from Patek Philippe. It has a beautiful Calatrava cross governor, the centrifugal governor, which is basically the mechanism that acts like a brake, or like the mechanism that will regulate the speed of the minute repeater sound. Now, the reason why Patek Philippe is the king of minute repeater is because of the beautiful sound, the harmony, and the speed of their minute repeaters. The purity is unequaled. Of course, other brands are able to make a minute repeater. Blancpain, Vacheron Constantin, they have minute repeaters. But sometimes, they can be either too fast, or sometimes they can be too slow, or they can be irregular between the minute and then a quarter and then the hours. They don't quite match. They are not on the same level. And the harmony between the highs and the lows, and then the purity of the sound that comes off of a Patek Philippe minute repeater is unequaled. Thierry Stern has talked about how one of their secret sauce ingredient is how they can remove the background noise of the minute repeater mechanism. If you listen to an old Patek minute repeater from maybe, I don't know, the 1850s, and you can go on YouTube to do that, you can still hear the mechanism in the back. But the modern minute repeaters of Patek are able to remove that, and you only hear the purity of the sound of the minute repeater. Now, Thierry Stern has said that theoretically, rose gold should be the best sounding minute repeaters, followed by yellow gold, and then white gold, and then last platinum. because platinum is 30% denser than rose gold, so it shouldn't sound as full. However, sometimes he even said that platinum make the purest minute repeaters. And I heard Alain Unzener explain that usually for them they offer white gold and platinum, and the white gold minute repeater will sound louder while the platinum minute repeater will sound purer. So let's listen to one now. So now let's talk about the dial. Yes, it has hand-applied white gold Arabic numerals, but that's not what I want to talk about. This is a Grand Feu enamel dial. So once again, Patek goes one step further. This is not just an enamel dial, but this is a Grand Feu enamel dial. So what's enamel? Enamel basically is glass powder or silica powder that has been grinded into a very fine talc-like powder that is then mixed with sometimes with water, but Patek in this case is mixing it with lavender oil, and it turns into a paste that will be applied to a dial blank. So some brands like Breguet are using a gold blank, and then some other brands will use brass, for example. So I don't know what Patek is using in this case, but then this is what they are doing, and it will be fired in an oven at very high, ultra high temperature of 850 degrees Celsius. And so a regular enamel dial, basically they will do this process maybe 6 to 9 times, basically less than 10 times. And they can look nice, but a Grand Feu enamel dial, it will be done 20 times or more. And in this case, Patek is saying that they do it dozens of times. So theoretically, that means at least 24 times. And this is extremely difficult to do because there is a very high risk of cracking every time you fire the dial in the oven. There's a high risk of cracking, so a high risk of rejection. If it cracks, you have to throw it away and you have to start over. The other risk basically is that the color of the dial may change. When you fire it at such high temperature, the color may switch. So those people who actually do the Grand Feu enamel dial, they have to be artists in their own way, because they have to be able to predict how the color of the dial will look at the end. So after each time you fire the dial in the oven, you will sand it and you will prepare it for the next coat of silica powder, and then you will fire it again, and then you will sand it again, and then you will fire it again, and you will do that again and again and again until it's ready. And at the end, you will put 2 final transparent coat of enamel that will give it this glossy finish. So the difference between a regular enamel dial and a Grand Feu enamel dial, it's the richness of the color that you will have at the end. And you can really see that with a white Grand Feu enamel dial. They really look more radiant and more rich and more luminous. It's like they're really radiating light, and they have this what I like to call this wet paint look. So to me, the most beautiful Grand Feu enamel dial I've ever seen is the Breguet 7147. I love that one, and you can have it for a fraction of the price, because you can get this for about 20,000 US dollars, but of course you don't have the minute repeater in it. But in the end, it's always something. There's one thing I haven't talked about yet, if you've noticed, and it's the hands. To me, the hands are quite average, and that's my issue with this watch as such level of craftsmanship. Yes, they are elegant Breguet style hands, and apparently they are individually shaped and finished and polished. But to me, they kind of look like stamped hands. There is no complex construction or different parts, or they look like they are quite simple to make, and they haven't been really finished to the level of the rest of the watch. If I compare this to other brands like Kari Voutilainen, for example, that has hands made of several parts that are constructed together, or Urban Jorgensen, very famous for their hands, or even Maurice Grossman with their purple hands, handmade, like each one hand finished, or even at a much lower price. But if you look at Grand Seiko and how they are multifaceted and reflect the light in such ways, and so I think that those hands are, they are not bad. There's nothing wrong with them if they were maybe on a $10,000 or $20,000 watch. But here we are talking about a $400,000 watch where everything is top notch, from the movement, the finishing, the chime, the dial. And then you have those hands on it that, to me, I wonder in a way if they are outsourced, possibly, because it kind of looks like they are not quite at the same level as the rest of the watch. To me, it looks a bit like, the sad vegetable on the side of your expensive steak. So in conclusion, let's be real, I will never own this watch anyway, so it's not really an issue. But if I were rich enough to be approved by Patek to buy this watch, which I never will now after saying this, but I wonder, if I would be able to get different hands on it. Do you think when you're this kind of customer that can drop $400,000 on a minute repeater, are you able to then work with Patek and request them to put different hands on it? Is that something that they do for this type of VIP? Well, if you're lucky enough to find out, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. As always, please subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.